I'm having my usual fabulous, wonderful, entertaining, stunning chat with choreographer William Soleau. And this guy's New York based, but as I asked him just a couple of minutes ago, he really needs, if he can afford to at least rent a year-round apartment in Santa Barbara, because this man has become an institution, may I say that, in Santa Barbara over the past 15 anyway years.
15 years, yes.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We have seen Santa Barbara has, and we're talking about William Soleau, who is choreographing the upcoming April 5th Saturday evening at the Granada Theater production of his own full-length ballet Carmen. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I mean that should have sent off explosions in everybody's head. Carmen, remember that story? That's the story. That's the one that draws everybody. It's a fabulous, fabulous story, and we'll talk about it. Very complex. But other stuff here in Santa Barbara, let's just mention a couple. An American Tango. I predict the biggest, most gigantic success in the history of State Street Ballet, that show. And William Soleau is also famous for. No, hang on. Let's stop all the famous stuff.
No.
But what he's got going.
We've done Carmina Burana,
Yeah.
Appalachian Spring,
Yep.
Firebird,
Yep.
Starry Night, quite a few.
Yep. And what I was going to say is not that he was famous for bringing all those things here to Santa Barbara and setting all of them on State Street Ballet, yeah, over the years. But that he's very famous for tinkering. And what he tinkers with is he insists sometimes. I don't think in Carmen, right? But bringing in some.
I thought about it though, Dan. Bring in a narrator. No, I'm not. Don't have a narrator in Carmen.
Okay, there's no narrative in Carmen. Doesn't need to be. But the point is, this guy is coming from theater. I think I can say that. And tango and others are multiple delights for audiences. Carmen doesn't need to have any special tricks or narrative. It is huge. Let's talk about it for just a second. I understand, because I have read the wonderful interview that Mary Love Thralls did with you recently, that you are taking the Carmen story, which I think, people who do not know the Carmen story, if I may say so, you're probably not watching this channel. In other words, this is the knockdown, drag out, tryst, love affair, murder, violence, jealousy, all that story. I'm going to let Bill tell us this story.
Well, it is one, as you know, it's one of probably one of the top 3 operas of all time that's done all over the world, and the story is so powerful. But it's not just the story; it's the music that Bizet wrote for it when it first opened in 1875. Of course, the story of Carmen caused quite a controversy because, first of all, it was about proletarian life. It was about gypsies and Basque, people who were looked down upon at that time in mid-century, 19th century Europe. And
Can we just call it racism? Okay, 19th century
racism, and the lead character gets murdered at the end, and everybody dies. I mean, it's a sad thing. So it caused quite a stir because it was opera comique, which was at the time you would have dialogue between the singing, and it was pretty tame back in 1875. It was family oriented, and this opera was not a family oriented. It was dealing with sex, with treachery, with sins and allurement and all these things. It wasn't your normal opera at the time. But it was sort of a bridge between that and Verissimo, which was the realism of Italian opera, and it kind of bridged that gap, and it really changed opera from then on. It was not really successful when it first premiered. Actually, it was in Paris. It was actually never done again for 7 years.
That's because people had to go like this for about 7 years just to get over it.
They did, and it ran for 36 performances, but Bizet died after 32. At the 32nd performance, he passed away, so he never got to see the critical success that Carmen eventually had. But it had productions in London and had productions in Italy, I believe, and they were big successes. So when it came back, I believe in about 7 years later, 1882, I believe, it then got the appreciation that it deserved, and the French audiences responded to it, and from then on, it's been a staple in the reps of every opera company in the world since then.
Now let's talk about turning it into a dance and how you have conceived, and apparently you've changed it a bit from the original production in 2006 that you conceived. And by the way, in opera, it's like here's this, and then there's that, and then there's that, and then there's that, and then there's the end, whereas you have, as I mentioned earlier, kind of flipped things around a bit, more cinematically.
Let me go back. The first Carmen ballet, as a ballet, was Maya Plisetskaya in 1964. She was a principal at the Bolshoi Ballet, and she wanted to do a version of Carmen with original music, and she wanted to use the story, which is from Prosper Murmuret book of 1845, but she wanted to do an original version of Carmen, and for dance, and she first asked Shostakovich if he would compose a score. He was terrified. He said, "How can you compete with Bizet? Bizet is so well known. Those melodies are so well known. I don't want to have anything to do with that."
Fool.
She then asked Cacciadorian, who had just finished his Spartacus, I believe, or whatever.
Yeah.
And he too said, "Listen, how can you compete with such well-known melodies? You will be sure to disappoint. If I wrote any type of music for Carmen that's not those melodies, forget it." He said, "Listen, your husband's a composer. You have let him compose it." So Shedrin, who was the husband to Plisetskaya, was a little nervous about it, but when she saw the National Ballet of Canada come to Russia in 1966, Alonzo was the choreographer, and she went up to him and said, "Listen, I'm interested in doing this ballet called Carmen," and asked him if he would choreograph it. And they didn't have music yet, but Shedrin had said he was going to write the music for her. Alonzo goes back to Canada, sets it on back to Cuba, sets it on the Cuban ballet. They teach it to the Bolshoi, and only then, when he saw the steps, did he start the process of creating a score for Carmen. And what he did, he realized, as Shostakovich had told him, because they were actually friends, he realized that he could not compete with those melodies of Bizet. People knew the story too well. They knew those melodies. And so what he decided to do was he was going to be, in his own words, a collaborator with Bizet. He was going to take Bizet's melodies and do different things with them and intersperse them into his arrangement of that. And in doing so, he totally changed the orchestration and the orchestra. He got rid of the percussion. He got rid of the trumpets and the horns and whatever. And he totally created it just for strings and percussion, with a big percussion, size in the orchestra. And so it has a very modern sensibility to it. And it's very earthy and heavier, but it still has all those melodies from the original opera. But sometimes he twists them a little bit different, and the notes might not be the same. But in doing so, he allowed to keep the Bizet music, which everybody knew, but he gave his own interpretation of it. So he wasn't really considered an arranger of the music. He was an equal partner in this new version for dance, which made it more danceable also. And the original Carmen, which I did in 2005, was the Carmen Suite, which was Shedrin's score for the ballet. And I think it's about 45 minutes long. And that's the version that I did. And it was a big success at that point in 2005 for State Street Ballet. But Rodney asked me if I could create a full-length ballet, Carmen. So what I did, I wanted to keep Bizet music. Obviously, I wanted to keep it all Bizet. So I took from two other operas of his, the Pearl Fishers, and L'Arlésienne, the Girl from Arles, that opera. I took their instrumental music from those two other operas, and put it in, like I do, with my sound effects,
Yes.
as you know,
Yep.
with bugles and da 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 and all that stuff, um, and created a full length
Yeah.
out of it. So now it's a full length ballet in 2 acts. Um, and that twist we were talking about in Carmen, that I used the same vehicle in Starry Night, I start the ballet at the end. So the first scene you see is actually the end of the ballet.
She's dead, kaput, or she gets dead and kaputted.
Carmen's not in the last scene of the ballet.
Oh, sorry. I thought her body is laying on there on the. Sorry. See what an idiot I am. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to give it away, but
Oh.
it deals with Don Jose's the first person you see at the end of the ballet. Okay?
Okay.
Carmen has already gone by. Now, he is about to be shot.
Really? Now, see, in the opera, I don't remember this. I remember him just falling at her body, and the whole last scene is him in collapse that he's done this horrible thing, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Well, the original story of Carmen, remember, Carmen's done many different ways. The original story of Carmen, in the book, Carmen has died, has committed murder, and actually, it's interesting because Don Jose blames it on Carmen, said it was because of her, the way she was. That's why she died. He took no responsibility for it. The opera, you see the depths of despair he goes into, but in the book, and he dies. He is shot.
For his crime of murder.
Everybody has done different versions. Well,
Fascinating.
mine starts in front of a firing squad.
Nice.
Okay, so it becomes a flashback. The whole story is now told from that flashback.
Wow.
So that's how I started. But anyway, I don't want to give too much away, Dan. You asked me too many questions, and it's but Carmen, I've kind of I like to shift things, and I like to take them outside the box a little bit. I still have it in Seville in 1820, 1830. Still have it set in that time period in the costumes and such. But in the book, you really had two main characters. You had Don Jose and Carmen, and you have a Toreador, but he's not really a main character. In the opera, they wanted to develop the character of Carmen and Don Jose, so they added other characters like Michaela, who is the country girlfriend of Don Jose, and they added Escamillo, who is the counterpoint to Don Jose in attentions for her love. And they were used as a vehicle to broaden the depth of their portrayal in the opera. And in my ballet, those four characters are the main characters. There is the captain of the guards, Uzunga, who does play a role in my ballet, but it's really the four characters who are the most important. But in my ballet, everybody says, "Oh, Carmen's this free spirit. Nobody can possess her," and
I was going to get to that, but go ahead. Let's hear your story.
Well, you can ask me a question, but I wanted to make how because I'm coming from acting, and I approach my works as a theater as well as dance, and I have the dancers. It's very important that they understand the dramatic intent of the action of the story, and so I wanted to make this a more a Carmen that you actually feel sorry for at the end, and you feel sorry for Don Jose at the end, for both of them, not just Don Jose and this woman who doesn't care, blah 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 blah.
Good. So far, you're okay with me. Go ahead.
I wanted there to be empathy,
Yeah.
because though she might be hiding those feelings that she has, showing that inner soft side to her, she never shows it. She's always brash and putting up that facade, and nobody can possess her. and she uses her wiles and her sexiness and all that stuff to get what she wants. She's always been that way. But in
She chooses her lovers.
she chooses her lovers.
She's powerful.
She's powerful, but in my version, I want also there to be moments where the audience sees that Carmen's kind of realizing that she doesn't have the type of love that she's seeing others have, but she doesn't want to admit that in my version. So it makes her softer, and so you have empathy for both of them at the end. In most versions of Carmen, Carmen knows she's going to die. She's already gone through the fortune cards and all that stuff, and she knows she's going to die. Whatever. My version, she has no idea that Don Jose is going to get so enraged and stab her. In my version, and so it creates a much more, to me, powerful moment. So it's probably a softer Carmen, not so much the thief, the wantonest woman. I mean, somebody who gets her way with men, no doubt about it.
But that's a big defensive thing anyway. So I mean, you're saying she's a sensitive. Well, I'll ask the question in a sec, but go ahead. Yeah, I mean, am I close?
So that's how I approach it. It's a much more realistic version of events. Of people. So it has more honesty. So they really become characters that you can empathize with.
Fair enough. Now I have to do this, or Rodney Gustafson will have my head, which is we forgot from the very beginning to do the whole plug, which is William Soleau, choreographer. The production coming up is Carmen. You've just heard plenty. I mean, plenty. More than I was expecting to hear. In other words, this is a juicy one. We already knew it was juicy. Production of Carmen, as realized by choreographer William Soleau, music of Bizet and Chadrin. 20th century and 19th century take on this wonderful music, and we're talking a performance by State Street Ballet, the one and only, the last performance of the season, one performance only, Carmen, on Saturday evening, April 5th. That's coming up in a couple weeks, 7:30 p.m., Granada Theater. One last bit. Phone number for all of you. You go and you dial the thing. It's called area code 805. That's for Santa Barbara. 899-2222. That is the Granada Theater box office. And by the way, you guys in Southern California, if you haven't ever been up to Santa Barbara to see the Granada, it's been made rather a splendid place these days. We can kind of sort of call it an opera house, So there you go. April 5th, Saturday evening, 7:30, Granada Theater in Santa Barbara. This one and only performance of Carmen. Now let's get back to a couple questions here. You have given me a beautiful storyline. Is there any more that you'd like to speak to about that just now? And then I'll throw a couple questions.
Unfortunately, we're only doing one performance of this. So it's not like somebody can say, oh, I saw this performance, I'll come back tomorrow. It's only once. So the audience should realize that we're not doing this several times. It's just going to be for one performance.
See how involved he is with State Street Ballet? Even William Soleau is plugging this gig. Okay.
This is I'm like the resident choreographer here. So,
yeah,
but I feel like it's the company has been such a part of me for 15 years.
Yeah.
And Libero, which I hear has been redone, was a smaller theater, and so here at the Granada, I can spread it out more.
I see what you mean.
Because in my ballet, I decided that I wanted the whole thing to take place, as did the original Carmen ballet, in a center of a bull ring. So I have ramps that come onto the stage from all around. It's great to have ramps come down, but they take up dance space. And so at the Libero, it was a little bit tight. But at the Granada, I'll have enough room for the extra dancers that we have in the production. So it will be a lot easier for the dancers, so they won't have to crowd themselves on.
Let's run through, Bill, for me, the three principles.
Okay, we have, I have one right here. But,
that's right. Yeah, hey, Lila, get in here.
This is my Carmen.
She's been sitting there so quietly. I forgot all about you. There she is, Lila Drake.
Hi, Dan.
Who will be playing Carmen. What? Don't slide away.
Stay in.
Now get in tight. I hate to say this, but you got to get in tight. Get in tight.
Yeah, we're here.
Tighter.
We're here.
Okay, go.
We have Lila, who plays Carmen.
Yeah.
We have Ryan
Camus,
who plays Don Jose. We have Randy Herrera, who was my Dutch Schultz in American Tango. He's back and he's doing Escamillo. And then we have Michaela, played by Cecily Stewart. And the four of them are the main characters in this production.
And Lila, did you do the 2006-7 performance? I can't remember.
I've done every version of this show.
So in other words, this
is Carmen necessarily, but
I started at the bottom and worked my way up. But yeah, in 2007 I did the role of Carmen.
Nice. You know, the beauty of this company, and let's just talk about it for a little bit, State Street Ballet. It's a resident professional company in Santa Barbara. Now we've got practically a resident choreographer from New York City, no less, who enjoys coming out here. What's this? What is? Can you speak just for a couple minutes? This ambiance, this wonderfulness. What is it? Is it Gustafson? Is it? Give me something.
It's all those things, but it's the dancers. Honestly, it's the dancers, and I have, as I've told you before, I've known these dancers. I've known Lila since she was got out of college here, right here in Santa Barbara. I've known her. I've seen her grow from being in the back row. I know a lot of these dancers. Marina, who's the ballet master here, was in my first ballet starry night back in 1998. And she's a ballet master here. So I've seen these people. So for me, when I come in, Dan, as a choreographer, it's great because I can come in and I know what the situation is. I know all the politics, all that stuff. I can throw that right off over my shoulder and just get right to work. I don't have to deal with it. I can come in the first day and just bang, go right at it because I know the dancers so well. And of course, my relationship with Rodney is great, and Rodney totally trusts me. You know, once I come in, he's gone. He allows me to do what I want.
He's raising money. He's at luncheons.
No, he's raising money. No, he is, but he trusts me enough that he knows that I'm going to do my job, and he leaves me totally alone. He doesn't put any restrictions on me at all. So it frees me up as a choreographer to do what I want to do. Yeah. And that's a great thing. Yeah. That's a great thing.
So it is like working with an ensemble theater company.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, that's the same kind of thing. Okay, I think I'm about done with you, but okay, I'm going to ask the cornball question because
ask her a question.
Well, I'm going to. I'll ask both of you, and in a way, it's rather serious. I can't remember if I've ever asked Bill Soleau this, but Lila, just you can give me. Let's start with Lila. This idea of because I'm a musician till I die, whether I make any money or not at it. You know what I'm saying? This thing that brings us to the arts for a lifetime. Does Lila Drake remember some kind of moment, something that said, this is it forever?
Well, when I started dancing, it was when I was about 3, and my sister and I had gone to a dance show with my mom, and we both said we want to do that. And then if we weren't like shoved into ballet, we both chose it. Yeah. But I think it's after I graduated and I came to State Street Ballet, and probably working with Bill was really one of those.
Good answer.
Yes, really.
One of those moments that has changed my life and really made me the person that I am. I've been encouraged to be myself and to find my own signature style, to be an artist and not just go through the motions, things with substance. Like I find the details and the meaning of what I'm doing to be what's most important to me. That I'm not just doing steps or making shapes, it's that there's something behind that, and that is what art is for me. And I think that that's how people can relate to shows like this. It's that it's something relatable and accessible to the audience, that they can relate to the character, and I think that we have to be humans in what we're doing, and it's not just doing tricks that are kind of out of this world, which are awesome, but I think that there's the humanity and the humility and the vulnerability of being totally open on stage that I found at State Street Ballet and working with Bill that made everything kind of click with me. Like, that is the stuff that I enjoy doing the most.
And in terms of Bill, I mean, there's the theater, the dance thing. What came first? How'd that work?
Well, theater actually came first. I social dance, as I told you before in other interviews, from very early on. My parents sent me to ballroom when I was, 10 years old. So
me too. I hated it.
Yeah, junior sociables and the girls with the gloves and the whole thing. And my sister was a dancer, so I was around dance. But I started in the theater very young, and then I got into dance theater. But you can see why Lila has been in the leads in many of my works, but because not everybody can also work the way I do, because I approach it very internally. Obviously they have to have the technique. Obviously, they have to know how to do the steps and pick up steps and whatever. But true dancing, like acting, is you don't see the acting. Shouldn't see the steps. It should come out from the inside, so it looks like it's happening at the moment. That's really important, and that's why I love working with these dancers, because they really appreciate maybe a little bit different way of working and having that realism and allowing them to be characters on stage. But it is the ballets that I choose to do. I like to tell stories, so people are people. They're not just we're not doing serenade or dance for dance sake so much, which tells stories too. But I really do like to tell a real story.
So without quite answering my question, I believe something about that you decided to move from theater at what point?
I'll tell you one moment. Sorry, cut off. See, you have to put me in line, Dan.
I will. We're going to stop in about 3 minutes. Go ahead.
I was 10 years old, and my mother brought me down from Massachusetts to Radio City Music Hall, and Richard Burton and Julie Andrews were doing Camelot. And I'm 10 years old. I'd never been to the theater really before. I didn't know. I grew up in a theological seminary. Okay, I hadn't Episcopal, so I hadn't seen.
Sorry,
it's all right. I hadn't really seen that much opera theater that much, and I remember the procession with soldiers walking with flags and with Richard Burton and Julie Andrews walking like that, and I saw the wind, and I saw the dancers running, and I was so taken with that from then on, theater was the stage. That whole thing became a passion of mine.
And ironically, then we're going to end it, but just so I can get into this conversation, now that you mention it, the first real event, you have the stuff with the old 78s when you were a kid that your mom had, all that stuff in terms of my pursuit of classical music, but the first live performance was the Spokane Youth Symphony when I was about 10, and they did a ballet program, now that you mention it. So how come I didn't become a dancer? I might have been more successful.
You still can, Dan.
Yes, never too late.
There's still time.
We have a part for you.
Well, I'm not so sure. I'd have to lose a lot of weight. Okay, now enough of this silliness. We're going to run this through one very quick time. Thank you both very, very much. Lila Drake, look at that smile, who plays Carmen. You'd never know. Well, you'll be, she'll do her Carmen thing come Carmen time.
She is really good.
I'll bet. Well, it's
been 7 years since she's done this role.
Wonderful.
And she has, as an artist, has grown.
Yeah.
As you know.
That also is fabulous, isn't it, to watch?
Oh.
Yeah.
It's from working with Bill.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have happened otherwise.
And William Soleau, choreographer. This is a production of full-length ballet Carmen, coming up Saturday, April 5th at 7:30 in the evening at the Granada Theater. I almost said Granada Palace in downtown Santa Barbara. Phone number to call, area code 805-899-2222. Boy, you both look good. Thanks.
Well, she looks good. You're just being nice to me.
Too much lighting.
Anyway, thanks much. Once again, a big hoot. Many thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
See ya.